As this wonderful scene makes clear, it's not just humanization that makes us feel for people who are fighting in the service of a bad cause. It's the idea of the lost cause. That is, the Germans on these U-boats are not in favor of what they're doing, and they know that they're doomed, and yet they keep on doing it because it's their duty. The duty to the lost cause is what these Nazis in Peterson's Das Boot have, and it's also what Hector has very, very strongly in the Iliad. My very favorite passage in the whole Iliad comes at the end of Book 6, after Hector has returned to Troy to confer and to fetch Paris into battle. On his way back out to the field, Hector finds his wife Andromache and their baby son Astyanax and Astyanax's nurse waiting at the gate, and Andromache begs Hector not to return to battle. And this is how Hector responds at line 440 of Book 6. All these things are in my mind also, lady, yet I would feel deep shame before the Trojans and the Trojan women with trailing garments if like a coward I were to shrink aside from the fighting. And the spirit will not let me, since I have learned to be valiant and to fight always among the foremost ranks of the Trojans, winning for my own self great glory and for my father. For I know this thing well in my heart, and my mind knows it. There will come a day when sacred Ilion shall perish, and Priam and the people of Priam of the strong ash spear. But it is not so much the pain to come of the Trojans that troubles me, not even of Priam the king, nor Hecabe, not the thought of my brothers who in their numbers and valor shall drop in the dust under the hands of men who hate them, as troubles me the thought of you, when some bronze-armored Achaean leads you off, taking away your day of liberty in tears, and in Argos you must work at the loom of another, and carry water from the spring Messeus or Huperea, all unwilling, but strong will be the necessity upon you. And some day, seeing you shedding tears, a man will say of you, This is the wife of Hector, who was ever the bravest fighter of the Trojans, breakers of horses in the days when they fought about Ilion. So will one speak of you, and for you it will be yet a fresh grief to be widowed of such a man who could fight off the day of your slavery. But may I be dead, and the piled earth hide me under, before I hear you crying, and know by this that they drag you captive. Now this is maybe not the most attractive thing we can imagine Hector saying. It's very self-serving, and Hector is very concerned with his glory, with his kleos, which is the special Greek word for glory that we'll be talking about in a future lecture. That unattractiveness, in a certain sense, makes Hector more real, makes him more able to be identified with. But the dominant note of what he says to Andromache is duty to a lost cause. He knows Troy is doomed. He knows Priam and he and his brothers are all going to die, and yet he won't stop fighting for Troy, just as those Nazis in the U-boats wouldn't stop fighting for Germany despite the fact they knew the cause was lost, despite the fact that they knew the cause was bad. And Hector knows his cause is bad as well. Continuing at line 466 of Book 6 of the Iliad. So speaking, glorious Hector held out his arms to his baby, who shrank back to his fair-girdled nurse's bosom, screaming and frightened at the aspect of his own father, terrified as he saw the bronze and the crest with its horsehair nodding dreadfully as he thought from the peak of the helmet. Then his beloved father laughed out, and his honored mother, and at once glorious Hector lifted from his head the helmet, and laid it in all its shining upon the ground. Then taking up his dear son, he tossed him about in his arms, and kissed him, and lifted his voice in prayer to Zeus and the other immortals. Zeus and you other immortals, grant that this boy, who is my son, may be as I am, preeminent among the Trojans, great in strength as am I, and rule strongly over Ilion. And some day let them say of him, he is better by far than his father, as he comes in from the fighting. And let him kill his enemy, and bring home the blooded spoils, and delight the heart of his mother. The Homeric bard's original audience would not need to have been told what the fate is of this baby, Hector and Andromache's son Astyanax. Astyanax is thrown from the walls of Troy when the city is taken by the Achaeans. Why does Hector pray this way? Why does Hector, despite the fact that he knows his cause is lost, pray for the future of his son? Well, that's why this is tragedy, and that's why the tragedy of Hector is such an important movement of the Iliad. Hector is human. He's not like Achilles, who knows what his fate is going to be because his mom, the goddess, told him. Hector is human, and humans, even when they see the headlight of the on-rushing train of destiny, nevertheless keep their hopes. It's stupid, but they do. It's what makes us human. It's what makes Hector identifiable to us as a human being. He hopes, and yet we know that his hopes are doomed, and he knows that his hopes are doomed. So the Iliad, in the end, in its three movements, is a meditation on the horrors of war. It's anti-war in that sense, but as I said, war was a fact of life, and the extent to which the Iliad is anti-war is a different extent than our own anti-war art tends to be, because thank goodness at this point in human history we can envision war ending forever, as the ancient Greeks could not.